get through this together. So welcome, and want to mention that Sarah Robinson is here for Charlie Parker Glisserman. I don't know, I think you probably know most people, Sarah, but I don't know if it would be helpful to have a small round of introductions.
I think I know almost everyone, but probably since I don't know everyone, it would be great to have a quick round. So I'll start and just introduce myself. And so Sarah Robinson, I'm the co-executive director of the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and here just subbing in for Charlie Glisserman while she's out. So thank you so much for having me.
I can go next. Hey, Sarah, welcome. I'm Haley Summer. I know we know each other, but Director of Communications for DOC. Great to see you. Great to see you all. And I will pass it off to Amy Farr.
Hi, my name is Amy Farr. I am here from the Victim Services Unit from the Vermont State Police, and I will pass it to Megan.
Good morning, everybody. Megan Place. I'm a victims advocate with the Windsor County State's Attorney's Office, and I will pass it to Meredith.
Good morning, everybody. Meredith Pelkey, Director of Victim Services for Department of Corrections, and I'll pass it to Kelsey.
You're muted, Kelsey.
I'm sorry, I was asked to forward the link and I lost y'all. But hi, I'm Kelsey, everybody, survivor of intimate partner violence. And I know Sarah, always happy to see her. Yes, sorry, I'm going to continue forwarding the link. Sorry, passing it to Tim.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning. Good to see everyone. And I'll pass it to Amy Richardson, who just joined. We're just doing introductions, Amy. I don't know if she can hear me. Oh, she might be frozen, actually. Oh, no, she's there.
She's moving.
Amy, can you hear us? Not. I will pass it to Shay in the interim.
Good morning, I'm Shay Kennedy. I'm one of the victim advocates at the Rutland County State's Attorney's Office. I will pass it. I think I see Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Levesque. I work with the Vermont State Police victim advocate. Let's see. It looks like everybody has introduced themselves.
I think we still might have a few.
I'm Jane Doe. I'm going as Jane Doe. I'm a survivor of domestic violence.
And I can't see if Joseph is on the call at this time.
I think Joe is actually out of office today. So I know from DOC today we have Meredith. Cassidy will be joining a little bit late, and I think Al Cormier is also out today. Tomorrow he retires, so it's his last few days in the office. So I'm happy to step in for Joe as his proxy if needed, but I don't have updates on the meetings with Vine because I have not been present in those.
Okay. All right, is there anyone else who I'm not seeing or we're not seeing who had, oh, Anna, you just joined? We're just doing introductions. Amy Richardson is joining us for the first time from Disability Rights Vermont, although she's having trouble with her audio, and Sarah is serving as proxy for Charlie, although I know you know Sarah well. Did you want to introduce?
I delayed her a little bit with my fumble of sending the new link, everybody. That's what that was.
Thank you all for the introductions. I appreciate it, and it's good to be with you.
So let's get started then. I don't know. I'm hoping everyone had a chance to look at the minutes. That again, thank you, Haley, for putting that together. Assuming so, want to find out if there's any discussion, changes that anybody had. We didn't hear anything. By we, I mean myself or Haley. So want to put that out for discussion or comment. Well, in the absence of such, then someone could make a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of whenever we met last.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Well, the minutes, as far as a vote, everyone who is able to vote in favor or can vote in favor, please raise your hand, thumbs up, whatever it is that you would like to do. Any discussions or any votes down? All right, well, the minutes are approved. In terms of the agenda, I don't know if anybody I didn't hear anything about any additions, deletions, suggestions. So if anybody has any at this time, that would be great. I also am mindful of Tim having to leave at 9:30, even though Megan will be taking over, if there's anything in particular that we want to restructure. So I want to give time for that conversation.
Amy, can you hear us now?
Yes,
Great.
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Jen, I'm happy to, nothing to add at this point. Just get right going in the agenda, and yeah, Megan will take over for me when I just heading over to the Supreme Court around 9:30.
Well, good luck with that, and thanks for making.
I'm not saying
time.
anything. I'm just
Oh,
sitting.
okay. You think. So wanted to just get some updates first in terms of, the different work groups that are going on between Vines and the Department of Corrections. Haley, I know you said that you could speak for Joe if there were anything, and I know Meredith, you had mentioned during our last meeting that you were meeting on a weekly basis, so trying to find out if there's any conversations that have been happening that would be helpful for the work group to be aware of.
I wasn't at the tech meeting this week, so I can't give an update on that, but I've seen emails going back and forth. They're still working on ironing out some issues. So I think that's good news. As far as our meeting with Vine, we don't meet until next week. So we plan on talking to them about how to roll out these changes, what might be best. So we will be we'll be talking about that. Like, how do we get the word out about the changes?
And I don't have any updates on behalf of Joe, but I'm happy to connect with him when he gets back in the office, and then maybe we can send out a written update to the group before next meeting so that everyone has it.
That would be
works.
great.
Yeah.
When you mentioned working on issues, Meredith, I assume is that still like the coding and okay.
Yes. Issues that I don't know much about, data issues.
And Anna, I know not to put you on the spot, but I know you are contracted with Vine, and I'm curious as to your involvement with these meetings and what that looks like, or if there is any.
Yeah, so far I have not been in those meetings. I did talk with Joyce earlier this week. She went on vacation today, but she said that she would love to have me attend those meetings in the future. I know she was trying to get a hold of Meredith to kind of circle all those wagons, but I look forward to being in both the IT meetings and the meetings with Meredith and that team moving forward once we get all those pieces connected. So that is my intention to do that in the future.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions on, the work groups, or we'll just maybe wait for additional updates? Maybe I'll flip B and C because I'm wondering, Meredith, if this is part of what you referenced in terms of rolling out information about the earn time notification piece. So if that was what you're referring to, that feels like a better way to segue the conversation.
Yeah, I was. So when I talk about updates, I'm talking about the 2 notifications that are no longer going out and the new update to the law. So right now we have it on our website. We're trying to get it on the Vine website as well. And then we've been working on language around notification. So once we have that language, I'm happy to send it out.
And the notification being the earn time
Earn
change?
time
Okay.
change and the 2 notifications that are no
Perfect.
longer being sent out. Yeah.
Does
And just
anyone
a-
have? Oh,
I have a
great. I was just
question.
gonna-
Will that, for the earn time notification, will that be like a one-time, like separate blast to anyone registered in Vine? Or I know, Meredith, that like previously that language was sort of popped into like every single notification, which did, as I think everybody's aware, cause a lot of distress sort of at unnecessary phases of cases. So I wasn't sure if and maybe that decision hasn't been made yet, but is it going to be like the initial change in the law where it was just like a blast went out to everybody who's registered for whatever way? Or were you thinking about are you looking at integrating it to some of the notifications?
We're talking about both things. Obviously, we don't want to cause distress. And we're also talking about adding it to the notifications, like temporarily. So more to come on that, but happy to hear any thoughts about that.
Tim, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just with the ongoing request for any changes that'll affect the statewide, if I could just receive an official memo that I can then forward out to our field with your language, as just occurred with the other 2 changes, that'll be really helpful, just so each one of our victim advocates can have that and have the same exact verbiage. That would be great rather than relying on the automated piece. I think the 2 are great. 2 both need to happen, it sounds like, but
Yes.
that'd be great. Thank you so much, Meredith. And that memo was exactly kind of what we needed. We can disagree on the what and the where, but the language from you all is exactly what I needed to get information out to the field.
Yes, we will do that, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And, again, I appreciate the work that DOC is putting into this and want to acknowledge that we spoke via email offline with, Meredith and Haley and myself just about some of how this would roll out, because certainly, again, very grateful for DOC for being the entity that got this information out to victims in the first place with respect to earned time. Again, that was something that the center did not do a good job of. This precedes me, but I appreciate that at least that information did get out, and it was very shocking. But I see this as, when we had the conversation, Meredith, back before the change about, it would be a really supportive thing and really great for your unit to be, in that position as you volunteered to have those personal conversations with victims and survivors who are already registered, who know this is happening, who then can be assured that DOC is there for them to provide that information. So I think this is a way that potentially, in my opinion, the system can be used. I really appreciate the concern about, again, not just blasting people and triggering, but in this way, I just think was really great that your unit, Meredith, volunteered to take this on in terms of those proactive notifications. So just want to thank you for volunteering that and appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jane, you have your hand up?
Yes, what are the 2 notifications that you're getting rid of from Vine?
Out to court, notification and facility to facility transfers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else from anyone before we move on? All right, so going back up to B, we've talked about this creation of a chart, and I don't know who it officially landed with, but if there's some way we can move that idea forward or any updates on where that might be, but I think that would be really helpful, especially for legislators to really see the whole piece, but also for us to think like, oh, geez, what is happening there? What's not happening there? Don't know again, I don't know where it landed, but if it should land elsewhere. But I think that would be a great product to put forth and to really help us moving forward thinking about this.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I can speak to this a little bit. So Jenna, who is unfortunately not here today, but she works for DOC and she's been helping a lot with the meeting minutes. She said she would help out with the visuals for the chart. So right now she has a lot of information from DOC that Meredith sent, and she's meeting with some folks from VSU, I think later today, to kind of walk through that. I think it would be helpful. I know, Tim, you mentioned in past meetings that you had some sort of like life of a case document. So if any folks have anything that they want to include, that would be great to send our way, or alternatively, we can kind of share a first draft with what we have and then see what gaps need to be filled in.
Do people have a preference? Because we have the people that we need, I think, or most of them, at the table in terms of state police representation and the state attorney's representation. Do people have, and then we have the network that can help us think about some of these pieces that we're not catching. Do people have a preference in terms of how that would look? Whether DOC would just provide a first draft and then you all would take a stab at adding on, and then we can move from there, or would it just be helpful to give your information to Haley and Jenna?
I think if we can just send things to Haley and Jenna for them to compile, that would be great. I know Megan had the document at 1.2 with the different descriptions of the different steps in the process. So that'd be fine with me if we can funnel everything to you, Haley, to collect and work with Jenna. That'd be great.
Sure.
I did drop that in the chat last time, but Meredith does have access to it because I created that document when I was at DOC. So it was part of a Google Drive, but I can send it again if we need it. It's much more complex than I think what we're looking for. But instead of having to rethink about like every single intersect of the criminal legal system, it is a good starting point.
Yes, I have that document and I sent it to Jenna. So
okay, cool. So that's already in the mix. Awesome.
Yep. Thank you, Megan.
Sarah, your hand's up.
Yeah, this might already be in that document that you're referring to. You're both referring to, but a few years ago we had an external entity do some work around identifying kind of how victims move through all the various points on the sequential intercept model. And they created kind of a visual model. And so I can also share that. Haley, is it you that we should be sending these things to?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so I will also send that to you.
And to my knowledge, Sarah, that's not been shared yet, but that was something that I was thinking about when I visualized what this would look like, was that intercept piece. Kelsey?
I imagine this will happen, but when you all finish creating this amazing document, I would just love for it to be shared with the task force because I'd really like to have it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I think once it's created, we can share a first draft with the group, and then folks are welcome to provide input if they'd like to.
Well, thanks for taking that on, but I do think it will be so helpful, for us in our work, and also just for legislators to have a better understanding as well. So appreciate that. And while you're still here, Tim, I don't know, I can't, want to just chat about the MOU development that obviously for any of you who, did Tim leave? No, there he is. For any of you that watched the hearing last week, the legislators really want to really expect some kind of more open and transparent agreement between the state's attorney's office and the Department of Corrections. So I know, Tim, you were right there with me, but wondering if there's any progress, if there's anything that you need or DOC needs, or any way the task force can be supportive in making sure that that's something that we can deliver on.
Yeah, I mean, really going to be a question of who else wants to sign the document. I think, DOC and SAS are definitely going to do that from testimony and whatnot. But if we're going to be referencing the whole kind of life of different interactions with working with victims, there's so many other folks that also interact with victims. So on the other hand, if you'd rather not own the document in a way, I would understand that if you'd like to just provide input. So I don't really have a preference, but for example, like Amy, I was thinking if you wanted to sign it, that'd be great. But also if you don't feel like you could or wanted to stay more in the advisory role, I don't have a preference. Likewise, I was thinking you, Jen, and you, Sarah, as well, that those types of organizations that interact with victims throughout different process, both in the formal court process, and then, Jen, with your folks after the process with restitution, and, Sarah, with you're running alongside with RFAs and also with the co-occurring criminal cases. So whatever people want, the document may get bigger and more fluid with more parties, but I didn't want to exclude anybody that wanted to sign it. And it's still a drafty thing right now. Like does not look very pretty right now, but I just threw a bunch of stuff in a Word doc. My brain works. I do every dumping ground, throw everything in a document, and then I try to make it look a little better. So I'm in the dumping ground process right now.
We're in that phase too.
Yeah.
Cassidy and I are dumping too. So
yeah, and then eventually we'll combine, and maybe even Jen, would it help if you gave us the authority to have maybe Cassidy and I and Meredith, and maybe I could pull Megan or Shay in with me for just SAS and DOC to just do a little, hey, let's just try to get this together. Or we could do live drafting during the meeting here.
No, live drafting.
We'll have to do that eventually.
I don't have any authority over you, Tim. But just I think that if you all want to just work together and bring something for review, for me, I'm happy to support, sign on to anything that you all are comfortable with, whether or not there's any specific obligations for the center, of course, but I don't know what typically with MOUs that I've seen, people sign on when they have an obligation. So I don't know what that would look like, but yes, go for it. Absolutely go for it. And then whether we do different MOUs for different entities, I don't really have it in my head because I haven't really seen the dumping grounds that you all have been working on, but go for it. I've given you authority, Tim.
Sounds good. The chair gave us authority, Meredith, so we can rally on that, and whatever victim advocates from my department want to come hang out, let me know. You guys are in court all the time. I know Shay and Megan and Karen, but please do. I'll try to set aside some time for that, and I'll have Kim McManus join too, who with her experience both in the realm of domestic violence, but also at the Criminal Justice Council, I think will be really helpful with the MOU process.
Kelsey, I see your hand up.
Well, I watched your testimony and I just wanted to say I really appreciate that I heard the committee say they would like to see all of the primary stakeholders have signatures on there because they would really like there to be meat on this and a commitment. And I'm not the expert. I'm here to listen and give feedback, but I too would really like that because there is a lot of conflict and breakdown, and it would be great if there was some commitment that you could all make. So we can push this forward because it certainly will not all be accomplished by November 15th. So I too really hope that you can come up with those commitments. And I like that the committee is pushing you all to do it.
Anything else on these pieces?
Well, I'll just read you what I wrote so Meredith can hear it. The opening statement to the purpose. The purpose of this MOU is to establish a framework for interagency collaboration and communication and to better define the specific roles and responsibilities to the extent that resources allow of each party upholding the rights of victims through the criminal justice process as guaranteed by Vermont law. So I figured, based on what we've been talking about, that type of mission is something we're all in favor on, and wanted to also put out there. None of us have unlimited resources, but victims of crime do not care and should not care whether or not we have the resources. So I think, one of my pieces in this, working with the victim advocates that we have, is that we make that good faith effort regardless in the statute, because there's all sorts of things where the legislature, we deal with this all the time. The legislature says you shall do this, and then they don't provide the resources to shall do that. So that's an important piece. I don't want to lose that in the piece, because we're coming up on another legislative session, and we all have our resources and our needs. And I personally believe my department needs more victim advocates, so they're not carrying 600 cases each, because you can act more like a project manager and a social worker with these cases if you have more time. And I know, looking at Amy and Danielle, with the homicides that are pending and haven't been charged yet, it's those cases. We have a 30% increase in homicide filings. So I know Amy and Danielle are feeling very pinched with and the municipal, folks too, but feeling very pinched with respect to just what you need to try to accomplish. But the good faith effort is kind of what I was thinking, Meredith and Jen and others. It's just making that a good faith effort to communicate, to engage with the other agencies and departments. And I think that's what the committee, the legislative folks want to hear. But yeah, that's what I was going with the purpose and the mission.
Yeah, I liked that, Tim. I think that was great.
And I appreciate the resource comment. And my secret hope, although this is being recorded, is that this will result in more resources for victim services, because I think everybody on this call knows it is the most vastly undersupported piece of the criminal justice process and outside. It is really frustrating for me, I know for Sarah, to continue to rely on special funds, and the federal landscape is every day it's a new thing. It's a new restriction. It's a new thing that we have to abide by. So if I'm going to advocate next year for resources. So that's one of the pieces that I hope that we can, get down by November, or if not by February, since we're all together until February, to think about what is really needed to carry this out. So, your departments, meaning state's attorneys, DOC, I understand, have limited budgets, but we need to do right by victims and survivors, and the legislature needs to do something at some point. So that's my soapbox. So moving on, in terms of, we got a little bit in the weeds last meeting about the role of law enforcement in this process. And I did work on the victims' rights form that we have provided, and a couple of things came out of that process. I submitted an updated form for you all, and I attached that to the email. Just want to also thank Disability Rights Vermont for doing the work on this initial form to make many changes for us. And Charlie gave me some feedback, which I incorporated to this form as well. She was hoping to maybe have a QR code for the network incorporated. I'm hoping we can still keep it to the one page, or get the front and back one page. We added, pursuant to our conversation, just a simple line about the victim notification system, which had been absent. So that is included under right to information and notification. And so just the updates. I don't know if anybody has any particular comments on what they were provided and additional feedback. There are still concerns that I want to address about how do we get this information out. But at this point, have people had a chance to review this form?
Yes, I think Cassidy had some changes. I don't know if she sent those to you.
I didn't get those.
Okay, I will ask her.
Okay. Did anyone else have, yes, if you could do that, Meredith, and then I'll incorporate those and still try hopefully to keep it to the one page. Does anyone else have any feedback on the form at this time? Oh, is that your hand, Amy?
I think I left last meeting just a little bit, I think confused about is there maybe you can answer this, Meredith. Is there a number that people can access victim services through corrections 24 hours a day? Did I hear that wrong?
No,
And is
you
that
have
the
that
number
right.
that's on here? Or is that the
Um,
Vine number?
I will look. I'll make sure it's our number. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll have to think about that, Amy, if we want them to call Vine or call us. Or call the facility where the person is. So I'm trying to think of what would be best. Let me think about that a little bit and talk to my unit and see what their thoughts are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you what my thoughts are? Just
Yeah, please. Please.
So I think this is just based on my experience trying to help people. Like calling the facility is really complicated and hard to get someone. And I think just the setup, if I'm remembering correctly, I think you have to have the name of someone. And so if you don't have the name of someone, it gives you different options. And it's just, I find it really hard to find a person when you're calling the facility after hours.
Okay, that's good to know.
And then regarding Vine, and again, I'm thinking about that gap that we keep talking about. If Vine only updates is it every 24 hours at 7:00 p.m.?
Every 15 minutes.
Oh, every 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Then that changes that question. Never mind. Then I would just advocate that it's not the facility number would be my feedback.
And there might be a way to forward the Vine line to our cell phone. So I want to check that out, which
Great.
would be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it used to, Meredith, used to be that it would dump into that voicemail, that shared voicemail. I do think there was some sort of connection. I don't know if that's changed since I've come back to SAS, but well, never mind. I don't want to get into the weeds because this is a separate conversation.
Yeah, so I'll check on that.
Okay, so it sounds like I'll wait to hear from Cassidy. And Meredith, you might just are you gonna do some checking into, what number?
Yeah, I
This
just
or
want to
this?
make sure, when they call, they'll get somebody right away. So
Okay.
that's why I have to see what we can do there.
And then hopefully we'll get the QR code from the network and I can incorporate all these different pieces into the next draft moving forward for next meeting.
I can get that to you, Jen. This week.
Okay. You realize I've been trying to do the formatting myself, so that is rather challenging. So, but otherwise, any other feedback or comments, or it seems like we're moving in a direction of having this in a better place?
Jen, I would just note if when all of the language and content is solidified, if folks want to make any like stylistic edits, I'd be happy to throw it into Canva to try to make it look pretty. Try my best.
Well, I want to also be mindful and certainly would want to involve you, Amy Richardson, or somebody else from DRVT, because they did work on the font and the layout as well as the language. So I tried to, act with fidelity to those recommendations, but certainly if we're going to go in a more broad direction, I want to make sure that we include DRVT.
For sure.
Thank you, though, Haley. Amy Farr, not to put you on blast, but I know that you had kind of taken it upon yourself to think about how we can move the booking information in a direction that's more reflective of, providing that victim information, top and center, and to try and keep that, make that a little more seamless. And I don't know, where you're at with that.
Yeah, so, obviously I work for a very big agency that has a lot of people that make decisions that are not me. So what I've started to do is just have conversations with people about, kind of what I did was just informally just talk to a lot of different troopers to say, would this be a complicated ask, and talk to them about their feedback. And then I took that and I have now kind of sent it kind of up the chain of command is how we work here. And people are talking about it and having discussions. So I did watch the testimony. I haven't put anything in place yet, just for anyone else who watched that. I wish I had that power, but I don't. But I have definitely brought this conversation and suggested remedies to the captains and the major, and I think just the higher ups in the criminal division. So that is happening. And has been happening, over since our last meeting. And essentially, I think this is very, in my mind, it's a matter of asking someone, it's adding, something to the booking sheet that says, victim name and number. And if someone wants to be contacted, and of course, if they don't want that to happen for safety reasons, then maybe they give someone else's name, or maybe they don't give a name at all and they have their own safety plan already in place. But it's just offering an opportunity for that name to be passed directly on to corrections, because I think, and to reinforce now that, like, if the sheet gets changed, really talking about Vine, and my kind of thought, depending on where we get, is just to kind of reinforce just how easy it is to kind of help someone sign up for that, and to do that across the board when that sheet gets changed. So I'm just thinking about ways to talk to our folks about encouraging access to notification, whatever that might look like. And I think it can look like a couple of different things.
As a part of that conversation, one of the things that I think you and I have spoken about is that there is no obligation during that process for anyone to provide that information. So just wondering if that has come up at all, and, what you think that would look like for law enforcement if that were to be something that was in statute versus something that was
as I read it, and you're the lawyer, Jen, so correct me if I'm wrong, but as I read the statute, it looks like law enforcement are required to let someone know if someone's in custody. And then I think that release information is the corrections, that's their obligation by statute. So my understanding is that in these cases that we've been talking about, one of the problems is that victim information does not automatically go with the
Mhm.
booking paperwork for very good reason. And so then do we kind of institute like an informed consent, practice where we say, do you want us to give your information to booking so that you can be notified? And again, I've got to get it cleared on my end before I even talk to Meredith and corrections about booking and how that works. Like, I don't know that I can even commit that we're going to say that, but I think to me, that seems like the first step. If they need the information to do the notification, let's see if we can get them the information. And how do we do that in the most kind of, again, with informed consent. So making sure, and that's why I love that you added what you did to the sheet, because if we can say to folks, you can get notified through Vine and be really clear, like, hey, we can sign up for this together right now. It's really easy. Takes a couple of minutes. Instead of just handing like a Vine card or, it's on that sheet, like somehow, like just rolling that in. We have a lot of law enforcement has a lot of statutory obligations, and it seems like this is an easy kind of just something that we're probably doing informally anyway, but probably people are telling victims to call the facility. And I have found that to be really difficult. So how do we make that easier? So I don't think there's a gap in that note in the as I read it of what the statute says who is responsible. I just think for some reason they don't always have the information that they need. And is that satisfied through Vine or adding a name on the paperwork? That's how I'm looking at it, and I welcome any feedback by people who are probably doing this more than I am.
And you, just before I see Megan's hand is up, but for people that don't know, you train on this form at the police academy as well, as I
I do.
recall.
I
Yes.
do, and so
So-
does Jen Furpo. I know that this sheet comes up in a number of their trainings at the academy. So, I would be able to directly do this in my training for all new people coming through with the changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Megan?
Yeah, I just wanted to, and Amy and I kind of talked about this a little bit offline, because again, this is like the biggest gap I think we've identified and the most important one to fill. And when Meredith and I had conversations about this, the biggest piece, I think, just so that we're all thinking about it as we try to like craft the best practices, in terms of like, I love what you're saying, Amy, and like we can do this together. It's really easy. That comes back to the booking issue that we have with like the 7 p.m. thing that you were pointing out, where it's like the booking process on the corrections end takes time. So like if the law enforcement officer is sitting with a victim or survivor in that moment, that person isn't necessarily booked into the facility, which means they will not even exist in the Vine system. And so I think I heard you offering some alternatives where it's like, it does seem like maybe the cleanest practice might be, yes, have that conversation about Vine and make sure they have that information. But I do think that logistically, it will have to be like a booking officer. I think it's going to have to be, especially for those fast turnaround cases where it's like they get to the jail, they've already posted. There's just a number of situations where it's like, it's got to be a call. The booking officers, it's going to have to be an in-person. I mean, certainly you could train that like, hey, when you book these people in, they want to be signed up. But I just don't see logistically how that could be your folks, Amy. I really do think, unfortunately, because of the timeline, it's going to have to be something that happens on the corrections end, or like ultimately when it gets to like my desk, Shay's desk, we are doing that, we are having that conversation with them the next day. And that's when I'm getting a ton of people signed up for Vine. But anyway, that's just highlighting that will be the sticky wicket, I think, in terms of logistics.
Yeah, and I think, Megan, you make a good point. I think the cases we're most worried about are when state's attorneys, victims advocates are not in the office, right? We're worried about the weekend and after hours. That's the challenging part because there's nobody at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight that it is, once that custody piece is transferred, it is the DOC's obligation. At that, the statute is really, really clear that it's like, once that person is arrested and in custody, that's where the obligation lies until it comes further down the line.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to mention Amy talking about the training that she does at the police academy reminded me that two things. There is a mandatory domestic violence training for all law enforcement officers, not just new recruits, but every single law enforcement officer in the state has to get mandatory domestic violence training every other year. And that will be happening in 2026. The planning for that training is already deeply underway. It's the Vermont Criminal Justice Council offers that training, leads it, but there is a committee that assists them in planning it. And there's a section of that training, which is like typically like statutory updates that are relevant to law enforcement. And so I just wanted to highlight that as a potential opportunity. If there was something that this group wanted every law enforcement officer in Vermont to hear within the next year, it's one way, I think, to communicate something like that. They're going to be in-person trainings and also an online training. And the network is tasked with kind of doing the statutory update. And honestly, I hadn't been thinking about doing anything related to victim notification. But if that is a desire of this working group, I think we could think about what the message would be and what the important piece is for folks to hear about that. And then I guess I just wanted to big picture mention that that's an opportunity that arises every few years. And so if coming out of this work, there is something that, we want to ensure more consistent practice around, that, the training in future years could be an opportunity for that too. So Amy, I appreciate you mentioning that, and I'm grateful for your work with all the folks going through the basic academy. And I also think there are opportunities to reach folks that have been in the field for a while too. Thanks.
That's great, Sarah. Thank you for that update. And, you might be careful what you wish for. We might all just start dumping lots of things into this training for you. Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like the reason why I agree completely with Megan, like it has to be a booking because, it is not just to think about how this works, like, an officer is with someone and then, usually you have that same officer that's going out to try to find the offender and they're not physically with that person anymore. And sometimes the investigation goes over shift and maybe they're not back for a couple of days. And I just think it is the best way to like hand off that information if a victim chooses to booking so that there's no callback, because I think in that callback and dispatch doesn't work, that is not gonna, it just is the most efficient way to get that information and to not complicate the process. And I think I just agree with what Megan said. I think from my point of view, that seems to be the best way to fix this particular gap.
Thank you. Kelsey?
sorry, quickly following up on Sarah bringing up the training. I observed it 3 years ago and it was fully online, and I'm glad to hear this one will have in person. I do worry a lot about departments outside of the SP, municipal departments and others. They have these mandatory trainings, but it isn't the same level of oversight. And oftentimes when I sort of check in about policies and practice, it just seems inconsistent, a lot of it. And so this piece, it would be great to have that part of the mandatory training. And then I also just hope that it could be disseminated to, chiefs across the board, some sort of additional oversight so that it gets plugged in internally, right? Because unless it comes down from their direct leadership, I feel like there's so many pieces they juggle, it gets lost in the shuffle, right? And they attend these trainings that are fantastic and so deeply thought out, but we know they, only retain certain bits. Like it's human nature to not take all of it. So I just hope it could be disseminated and put the pressure on leadership to bring it down internally as well.
And I think that's certainly a critical part of whatever we do, because, having had this form revised several years ago, and to see that still, Tim said, like, his own police department still has the really old form. The AGO's office still has the really old form. And this was an intentional revision because the other form was just not working for victims and survivors, and it wasn't accessible. And the center spent the money to translate it into 14 different languages. And so to find out that, that's just not getting out there, it's going to take, I think, pretty much all of us to brainstorm how we provide support and getting this information out, and support to the municipalities as well. And my hope is that everyone will say, well, VSP's doing it, so we're going to do it too, and it will be easy. But I don't know how that's going to work, but I think all of us will have to brainstorm how this piece will look moving forward, because we'll put a lot of work into it, but if it's not being used, the booking piece, if that's not being utilized, it's going to take all of us to kind of think about what it would take to make that happen. Anything else on this at this time?
I just wanted to add that I do think that the form that sucked, that Amy and I did, we did have a ton of success rolling it out though. Like I still see it like in HPD. There's a few like municipal agencies that it still comes over in their case paperwork, and we did it forever ago. And what I will say, I think was very successful about the rollout of that was that there was like the whole VSP obviously is a much tighter ship, but we did have buy-in from the local like advocates and state's attorneys, where I think there's an opportunity where Tim's not here, but we could talk about like rolling it out like high up, but then also through the advocates with their local state's attorneys pushing out to, there's usually like a chief's alias. And then when we're seeing cases, just like checking in with officers, because we do a lot of back and forth about like, hey, victim information is missing from this packet, just pieces that don't get tied up when we're flash citing people or whatever, where I think we could continue to like whenever we decide what these forms look like, continue to like push them out, be like, do you have this? Do you, I didn't see this form. Like, are you using this? I just want to make sure you guys have it, because it takes time to like trickle through. But I think if they see buy-in at like all of the levels, that's when you see it like really getting integrated. And that was like probably a year-long effort, but it did seem to stick in some good areas. So I think that we have the tool, like we've seen it work. So I think I'm confident we can do it.
Well, that will be helpful because, we did have, Siri and Kelly and trying to think, we had like Tammy, we had a couple of other advocates who worked on the form. Sarah Roberts, who was the coordinator at the time, did as well. And your experience was missing in terms of how that process would work. And so thinking about that, and absolutely agree that having advocates and state's attorneys being a part of that process will help. It was Shay's idea anyway. It was Shay's idea.
Shay's brilliant.
Yes. Um, okay, so we'll keep working on that. I'll wait for feedback, for other pieces and we can look at that. We'll see if Amy's able to make any headway and, see the shrug and the laugh. Well, try. And, we'll just circle back on this issue as well. Thank you, everyone. Would people like to take a quick break before we get into the text of the forms? Okay, let's take a quick, like, 4-minute break. Give it another minute, just checking to see who's on. Jane, if you're here, just want to give a thumbs up, just so I know.
I'm here.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's want to get started with starting to look at some of the language that DOC provided and appreciate that. And want to start, if there's no objections, with hearing from Amy Richardson from Disability Rights she sent us all that information in terms of their feedback and just to get, some overall comments. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review what they had provided, but did want to provide time to make sure that she had a chance to present their thoughts overall. And I don't know how you want to proceed, Amy, what would work best for you?
So I guess I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm sorry I missed the first few minutes. I had some technical difficulties, but I suppose you all know I'm Amy Richardson. I'm an advocate at Disability Rights Vermont. And let's see, I guess in general, our suggestions are based on trying to bring some clarity to the language used, adding definitions for words like parole, probation, furlough, trying to use plain language and simplify when possible. So, we'd like to see people who sign up for the notifications be sent an email or given a printout ahead of time. So maybe to prepare them for what they'll see. I feel like it might be a little jarring for people to suddenly see, this in their email. Maybe it'll be less triggering for them to know what they're going to, what to expect. I guess it's not possible to, I learned it's not possible to choose which notifications you receive. I understand it's all or none. And I wonder if at some point in the future, a change, might be considered so that, a survivor might want to know when a prisoner is up for parole or released and not everything else. It seems, I signed up for the VINE notification system. I hadn't heard of it before last week. I don't know how often people are receiving notifications, but it seems like a lot to me. And I also want to say, I noticed when I signed up, there were two options for language preference, English and Spanish. The website offers 16 languages for translation. So I'm not sure if that's, an option to offer more language preferences. And let's see, I heard someone mention something about an after-hours phone number. I'm wondering if there are language preference options for that. And if the people who answer those calls have the ability to access an interpreter. So it's really kind of a quick, very quick few things I wanted to say. I don't know if people wanted to go through the suggestions one by one, but I don't know that there's really any reason to do that.
Amy, I just have to say I appreciated your edits.
Okay,
and yeah, and that is so helpful for us too. Because obviously we want it to be as accessible as it can be for everybody. And Anna, I don't know if you know the language questions. If the people who answer the phone, I'll let Anna try to answer that one.
At VINE itself, they do have, I believe I think it's limited to what we have, what Vermont has paid for. So, if you go on to VINE, yes, through Vermont, it's just English and Spanish. They have the capability to add other languages into that. And as far as calling the actual helpline, there are other languages available, but I'll have to check in to see if there are 24/7 interpreters available. But I can find that out for you.
Okay. Maybe there's not funding for that, but hopefully there is.
Well, I mean, that is something that we've identified, Amy, or some of us did as an issue because Spanish, as you know, is not the dominant non-English speaking language in
Right.
Vermont. The center provides language line to all of our subgrantees, and we only once in a while, very rarely ever get a subgrantee using it for Spanish.
Mhm.
It's always for, Nepali,
Mhm.
trying to think, but we provided this information before as to, we did a study assessment of what the non-dominant languages are, or what the non-English speaking languages are, and provided that as well to the courts, to
Mhm.
this to the DOC as well. And so that feels to me like that's something that has to happen. And if there's a resource issue, then that's where the legislature comes in.
Mhm.
So I really agree with you. And then the menu option is something that's been brought up for quite a while. And so I know that, or I understand that there's a DOC Vine work group that is looking at putting that back into place in some variation. But agree that, the all or nothing is something that we need to look at.
Mhm. Thank you for the opportunity to review and give feedback. I appreciate that. And I know Tracy does as well. You all know Tracy, though, I guess. She can't be
Yes.
today. Yeah.
For the group, what would be helpful in terms of, since we have Amy here, in terms of what she provided? Do people have specific feedback or questions, or how, what makes sense in terms of how to proceed with what she provided and additional, questions that might be helpful for us? I'm not seeing hands, but I'm seeing thoughtful faces, so. So with respect to this piece of feedback then, oh, Shay, I saw you come off microphone, so.
Sorry. So I know I had missed the meetings, so I'm sorry if I missed the heads up that these were like the new suggested versions of the Vine notices that were going to be sent. So that's on me. I was wondering about, it seems silly, but the like emojis or little icons that are in these notifications, if I know still with certain like phone users and, iPhones and Androids and things like that, sometimes those little images don't always come through and it might come out distorted. I wasn't sure if there's any kind of like way to check that. Like once it gets sent, will it actually show up that way, or is it going to look like a strange box or things
Yeah,
like
I think
that?
those are questions we have to ask our technical people. We could ask Joe that for sure. And you know, I know Shay, you sent some feedback about text messages, and depending on your carrier, the messages come in one way or another way. So it's kind of complicated. But I think we should really ask Joe these questions because I think they're important.
Yes, I think that was my other question, because this, like the language and the feedback from disability rights is super helpful about trying to like narrow it down and using simplified terms. But even right now, as a registered user, the emails I get are still different than the text messages I get. And I can appreciate that that could be for many reasons, right? Smaller message, not as many links or things in it. But I guess if that's a technology question of how, like, can we prepare both of those, or how does the smaller text message get pulled from what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm not sure, but I know it's a character count. You can only have a certain amount of characters per text message. So that's why they come in. Sometimes they come in several and they might be mixed up. I don't know if that's just a technology issue, if we can fix it, or I think we can talk to them about it, but it's something that's concerning for me too.
So are these, is the language in these notices what would be sent out in an email?
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful to know because I think a lot of victims are opting for text messages. That's their preferred method of updates. Personally, I use my work email. So like when I'm getting these, I'm getting what I sent out in response to these, like what they actually say in the longer version. And there's, plenty of information and links and phone numbers to follow, but the text messages are different. The character count I can appreciate and the difference in the how it's actually sent and how many texts you will receive. But the language of what the texts say, I think might also be helpful to know.
Yeah, I think we can look at that too.
I was a little confused about that because I saw your screenshots, Shay, and I thought, well, these are something different because they don't match up with the email. So I wasn't understanding that they have the same intention, I guess.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to work through that. I think that's a big issue and something I want to figure out.
Right, or even if it's like this text message is from Vine, to see the whole message, click the link or something like that. And
Yeah.
then you see what's in the email language, but I'm not a technology person.
Not either.
It's
I
above
think
me.
that would be great though. I think that's be great if we could do that. And then we'd want to look at we also are looking at the in-app notifications. So there's an app too.
And what about a registration notification? That was one that I had noticed that I get every time I register for an offender, but it wasn't in the list of notifications. Like you've registered to receive notifications for inmate or offender, blah, blah, blah. In the new notices we got with the new language, I didn't see a registration confirmation notice.
Yeah, I can get that for you and send it out. But I think Amy made a good point. Maybe that confirmation email is where we could talk about what to expect from Vine notifications.
I think that
So you're
just might
reflecting
help
back
people.
on terms of, oh, I'm sorry, what?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, this is what Amy was saying about some sort of predictability in terms of this is what I'll see. So I think that's a great connection point. Sorry, Amy.
That's okay. When I was first reviewing them, I thought it might be a little difficult to see the person's name at the top. That's the first thing that pops up. So I thought about potentially moving that down into the middle of the email. But I think as long as people know ahead of time, we all get so many emails and text messages. They probably want to know what they're going to see, and then at least they'll be prepared.
And you mentioned the phone app, Meredith. I don't know if people can see the chat, but Tammy had asked about being able to put a message on the phone app to look at the website for further explanation.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And Anna weighed in to say that that's what Washington State does in terms of she gets the text that says give a notification, then she logs in to see what it is. So sounds like these are all points that are resonating with everybody.
Sorry, I'm unmuted and I'm thinking out loud.
Oh, I was just about to ask Shay if you had more pieces to add because I know you'd provided some feedback as well.
I'm thinking now of like when people sign up, how do they know what to expect? Or like if they get the message and they have to log back in, I'm thinking of like the sooner in the process victims have this information, I'm assuming the more like chaotic their life is at the moment. And like history past, I still have like these little Vine cards that we can hand out. And in here has like the offender name, the offender number, and the 4-digit PIN number that people still have to register with. So I'm just thinking like when you get a text message that says login for updates, how many people are going to be like, well, I don't remember my username and password. Or the login information. So I don't have an answer, but I just had that thought.
You can log in without signing in. I think that if that quells your anxiety at all, Shay. But like I can go on to Vine without signing in and just like type in any offender and like look at the record details. So I mean,
good.
obviously signing in, I actually don't know what additional, because I use the back end so much more frequently than I check the front end of things. But I do know that I don't front end sign in, I just log in and then I search somebody and I can still access all that same information. I will highlight though that it often still has, and I know that Jane has pointed this out in the past, but if the person, as many of our people in custody have experienced, they were on some different form of supervision status at some point. And so I find that most frequently, in fact, I can't think of any cases off the top of my head where it tells you who the case officer is at the facility. It almost always defaults to a PO that oftentimes has been like divorced from the case in, for years. So I don't know. And I think that's a Jacob, is it Jacob? Am I misremembering his name? It's anyway, like seems like a
Joe.
data set question. Joe, geez,
Joe.
Joe, I'm sorry. It's probably a Joe question because I think it's probably a data set issue. And also though, I don't know if DOC wants survivors contacting the caseworkers directly, even though they're the ones that do have the most, up-to-date relevant information. So just flagging that as like it's not a notice issue, but it is like if we're following the links, it's one of the problems that comes up.
So when you go into Vine, it could have a PO who worked with the person a long time ago instead of the current PO.
Well, it's not a PO, it's a caseworker now, right? So sometimes it is the reentry PO is listed, and not that they wouldn't necessarily have information, but like specifically in Jane's circumstance, it still lists the probation officer. It does not say who the caseworker is, and that person is not going to release to any form of supervision. So I don't think it's even relevant that it would be the reentry PO that would have information because they're just getting kicked.
And I would add that oftentimes that PO doesn't even have permission to view the most recent case notes about that offender, which is an internal DOC issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, I'm going to talk with Joe about this too.
Jane, I think you had your hand up. I don't know if it's still up.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that pretty much everything Megan said. She already said it. So, but yeah, it's still currently as a probation officer. That doesn't really exist, I don't think, anymore, honestly, because I've called and that person, I don't even think works there, but definitely isn't on his case anymore. And I also got a Vine message or email the other day saying that he was up for parole. And then immediately got an email from Megan, I can't remember her name, Candace, maybe?
Claudia,
yes. Immediately
correct.
got the email from Claudia, which technically isn't really her job. So that's also more on the workers, on you guys, to have to email the mistakes of Vine saying, ignore that message. Don't freak out. He's not going up against parole. He's maxing out. And he doesn't have parole, which blows my mind. But either way, I still got the Vine email saying he's going up for parole and is eligible for parole, and which he's not. So those are like the gaps.
Yeah, I'm glad Claudia caught that. She does work for DOC. And that is part of her role. So I'm glad she was able to catch that. Unfortunately, with Vine, it sends out a parole notification 30 days or 60 days, I think it's 30 days before the hearing. And there's no way to like turn that off for somebody we know isn't necessarily going to get
A hearing?
paroled.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's not gonna have a
that's-
parole hearing, and that's
Yeah.
one of I mean, I don't wanna, because we're talking about the content of the notices, I kind of as a sidebar wrote this down, that the parole notification that goes out automatically in all cases, and my understanding, I don't, again, this is probably a Joe question, but it was a huge frustration for me when I was doing victim services for DOC, that the notification that gets sent out when somebody is reaching the end of their sentence, whether they're eligible for release or not, many are not because they're programming or because they're maxing out, as Jane pointed out, will get a notification saying this person is up for parole. Like there's no parole hearing even scheduled. It's definitely not what's happening. And that also is not, that's the only time that notification goes out. And they might then subsequently be eligible for parole when they complete programming, but there is no automated notification that goes out to advise survivors correctly. And then the only remedy for that is, I mean, it falls to DOC staff, which, as we know, the victim services unit is very small, and the cases we're assigned to are very limited. So, you know, the consistency of that information getting to survivors in a correct way falls to a large number of staff who may or may not be equipped to share that information or, you know, seek out how to contact a survivor, you know, and that's more of a bigger logistical issue. So I think that we can table that for another time, but.
Yeah,
And that's why
definitely
I
putting
was
a pin
saying
in
I'm
that
very
one.
lucky,
Geez.
but
Yeah,
other people might not be as
still.
lucky.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying I'm very lucky to have Megan and Claudia, because I know other people might not be as lucky with the caseloads and all that. So I don't know. For me, I got very lucky. I mean, sometimes, but sometimes not. But I'm very lucky. But a lot of people don't have the people that I have, unfortunately, because they're just way overloaded with cases.
And unfortunately, that attention came not because of the way that DOC assigns cases, but because I had transferred roles from working with Jane in one capacity, knowing that she had been deeply harmed by the lack and the problems with the notification service, and then made sure that she was assigned a VSS when we took the case on at DOC. So, you know, we can't rely on, I mean, it is important. It highlights the importance of like an MOU and the human element of this, but it also really highlights the limitations of the Vine system, which obviously that's the focus, and we want to make this service the best it can be. But there are certainly other gaps that I think we can identify and, I don't know, have on a back burner somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely limitations, and that is a big one, Megan, that you and I talked about a lot when you were here. And you know, Vine is only as good as the data we have, and unfortunately, you know, the data isn't always great. So, we have to work with what we have, unfortunately. And and resources, like you said, Megan. We're a small staff and we're not assigned every case. So we're trying to rely on all the staff at DOC to do this work too.
Well, that parole piece seems really huge. I'd never realized that at all, that you get the one-time notification and it might not even be that the person's actually going to have a hearing. And
yeah, which is why it's important that like people like Claudia and our POs reach out. And I will say that they do that. I can't say that it's 100% fail safe, but they really do. They are invested in doing good victim work.
well, I think though, if there's a way, and Anna, you're on this call too, is, you know, if that can be looked at, because certainly I appreciate that, you have a very small staff, Meredith, and it's not everything's going to be caught. And, caseworkers, other workers on, who do this are not always going to be able to catch it in time. So I just am curious as to whether or not that's something that can be resolved in a rather simple way.
Yeah,
But-
and that's on our to do one of our
Okay,
number
great.
one priorities. Yeah, working with Vine to figure out like how do we stop pulling this data from this point and pull it from this point. So yeah, we're working on that, and we have been
Great.
for a long time.
Yeah, because the data, the reason, the triggering event is eligibility for release. It actually is not a parole hearing. Like that's not the data set that's in OMS that's getting pulled. So that's why it is probably one of, next to the earn time PMD code issue, which maybe has been remedied since, like that was the number one notice that I was dealing with at corrections, where it was like, it was more often than not inaccurate. And some people reach out, some people, I don't know how many people didn't connect around it, but it was a frequent, when I was registering people for Vine, it was a frequent thing where I was backpedaling about like, they're like, you told me this, and it's like, yeah, yes. And I unfortunately feel like a lot of the VSS staff, the VSU at DOC is often, that is a primary function of their work, is just telling survivors like, yes, this information is wrong, here is the good information, and like trying to seek out that information, which isn't always that easy even for internal staff to achieve in a timely fashion. So it's a difficult piece.
Well, we'll add that to our parking lot, moving forward to, check in on how that's going. I do want to find out in terms of the text of notifications, and how it's provided, if other people have any feedback, or thoughts. I know that, Charlie with the network had provided some pieces in writing that I shared, so I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add at this time, or if we want to just see, Meredith, what pieces you are feeling that, can be implemented in terms of DRVT's, feedback in the actual text.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all the feedback, and we're, still crafting all of this language and we have to work with our vendors too to see like what's possible. And we will definitely include a lot of this feedback, and I appreciate it. So we're still working on that, Jen.
Okay.
Because we have to figure out like what we can say in the text messages, what it looks like in the app. So this was just our first draft at fixing what we saw were problems with just the this is just the email notifications. And if you think about it, we also have phone notifications. So, that's tricky too, because we don't want somebody to have to sit on the phone for 15 minutes and, so we can get all the information out. Like, how do we best get this information out to different users?
I think it would be helpful if, as we're looking at the content of the notifications, they're labeled, whether or not they go out after hours too. I know there was some discussion early on about how certain notifications are identified, if they're, they need to go out immediately, or if they can be held until business hours.
I guess I don't know I guess I don't say more, Danny, about that.
We had a couple of meetings back. Ashley identified that there's certain attributes to notifications that allow them to be released either off hours or just during business hours, and they have like a tag, and that's all I know.
Okay, I'll check in with her about that.
That was part of the presentation that Joyce provided back in June. And I think she called it, there were like emergency notifications or emergent and non-emergent. And she said that the ones that are designated in the one category go out within the 15 minutes. But the other one, and they go out 24/7, whereas the other category are just for business hours. So that was part of Joyce's presentation as well.
Okay. Well, I will check in with Ashley about that for sure.
Jane, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just don't want to sound like a broken record but with her saying there's non-emergency and emergency ones after hours. In my situation, I almost lost my life because I didn't get that notification until he was already rearrested. And I don't think I ever got it, honestly. So I don't know how it went. Some cases get missed as emergencies, I think. So that's obviously human error, I'm assuming. But like she was saying, there's non-emergency and emergency notifications. I mean, with all domestic violence, there should be emergency notifications, I feel like.
I imagine all releases are emergent, but I think I don't know, Danny, do you have any idea which ones would be non-emergent?
No, that's what I was hoping we could get some clarity on here.
Okay,
The
I will ask
parole
Ashley.
one, I think that probably, if I'm just guessing, like the parole notification, like in 60 days, this person's up for parole is probably non-emergent. Transfer between facility. I know we don't do that anymore, but like that was probably a non-emergent notification. I would imagine any release from custody. And also not to sound like a broken record, because again, we're talking about the content, but one of the pieces that is concerning to me is like, I think I emailed Meredith and Ashley earlier this week because I got a stacked set of notifications that came at the same time. One said this person is at Northeast. The other one said this person has been released from custody, and they came in at the same time. And I imagine I'm still trying to figure out like what triggered that notification. He is still in custody, and I did get confirmation of that a couple days later. But again, it's like for the people who I'm working with, it's urgent information to know, especially if there's the possibility that that person is out of custody. And I've flagged it before, but some of the things that trigger that notice are problematic because they might be a transfer to a mental health, like a hospital or a mental health facility, or they could be like transferred to Fed custody. And so I don't know, and it might be a data set thing. I know some of it is like HIPAA-y stuff, right, with like transfer to hospitals, but looking at some of those nuanced pieces around notification where it's like, and how do we make sure that, like, I don't know if there's a way to flag those for a VSS or something so someone can make a phone call saying, hey, you're going to get this notification. The person is not out of custody. The feds have picked them up, or like whatever, and then give them a different resource. Because I, even as an advocate, I've been doing this work for almost 2 decades. I'm like, I don't know who to call. Like, I don't know who is going to be able to give me this information. So a survivor absolutely is not going to be able to find that information in any frame of time that's useful.
And Megan, we flagged that one.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything that comes up like this, we elevate it immediately. We're just as concerned, just so you know. And that was a human error. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fix all that, but we are, I want to reassure everybody, we're just as concerned. So anything that comes up, please let us know. And I appreciate you, Megan, for elevating that to us. So anything like that, elevate it.
Yeah, and I think also it's important to maybe we can get Tim to push out like just a collection of when these things happen so that you guys can, I mean, that's the thing, is the communication, so that you guys can see when it's happening and then find out like what the systemic errors are and what are just, like you said, human error is going to happen. But again, even going to that person who like messed it up, it's like, hey, when you accidentally, delete this or, put in like, this is what this victim is going to get. So like, if that happens, you need to let one of us know immediately or something to that effect.
So we've said that before, and we put this out to all facilities, if you make a booking error, you need to contact us immediately so that we can contact victims immediately. And does that always happen? Clearly, in your case, it didn't. So we put that message out again. Before they fix it or try to fix it, we want to know so we can call victims and say, you may be getting this notification, you may be getting another notification. Here's what's actually going on. So.
Yeah, and I guess part of what makes it tricky is that often when they're making the error, they don't know they're making the error.
Just want to acknowledge that Kelsey has her hand up.
Hi, I just want to clarify, and I'm sorry if this was addressed, but I couldn't follow along. I've experienced, and several other survivors that I have the privilege of talking to have experienced, in particular, the being moved for a medical appointment. And I know that that becomes a HIPAA issue. And that's been the response I get whenever I bring this up, but it is really concerning. So I'm wondering what I'm hearing. And then I also hear, Meredith, you're really trying, and some of it, unfortunately, there isn't a perfect fix. But I guess I'm just wondering, in terms of the medical piece and HIPAA, is there a way to just change the verbiage of being transferred to a different location? I don't know, something other than being released. Like, that's the part where it's a little frustrating to get the response, well, it's a HIPAA issue. Like, can there just be change in the wording?
Yeah. Did you see the new notification that we did? I think Amy highlighted the issue with that language, but thinking about changing it to detainment facility so that folks know they're still being detained, just not at a facility.
Perfect. That's great.
Or something like they remain in custody, like this person is no longer at Southern State Correct or wherever, but they remain in DOC custody. You will be notified when they're returned to the facility. So that would cover med. But I mean, I think that, at least from my perspective, when I was at DOC, I do think that's a Joe issue. Because again, I think it's like, it is just that they are booked out, right? And so they're booked out and they just get the book out notice of like, they're released no matter what. So I don't know if there's like an OMS field that could be pulled from that's different, that does indicate it's a med furlough or a medical appointment, or even a transfer to like federal custody or out of state custody, or like another state took them. I mean, I think there is a data piece to this too that would probably need to be sorted out.
Yeah, it does say has been transferred to a detainment facility. Oh, right now it says another facility, but we wanted to change it to detainment facility.
And is there a specific notice for just like for medical like release?
Med furlough?
Not just med furlough, but like, right, med furlough, and also like, you know, we do have acute, we have some acute where they're not necessarily furloughed, but the facility can't address an emerging medical situation before things can happen. And so they get transferred. I know that happened in one of the cases that I was working on when I was at DOC, where they got like emergency transferred to the local hospital where the victim survivor worked. And it was like, shit.
Yeah, I think we need to dig into that one a little more because of HIPAA. They do I think a release, because if they're in the hospital, they transfer them to the field. But they're still being staffed with 2 corrections officers. So let me think about that a little more. If you have any ideas, Megan, too, or anybody, please send them to me around that.
All right, any other, oh, I see Shay.
Hi. The notice specific to update on individual custody status includes a line in here about your registration will remain active for 1 year. If the individual does not return to Vermont DOC custody within that time, you will not receive future or further notifications. I didn't see that on the other notices. Is that just saying if, what is that saying? I guess I don't understand.
So what it's saying is that, okay, so when somebody, let's say somebody leaves Vermont custody, or even, is a max out and maxes out. Registration still remains active for 1 year. So if that person is rearrested, you'll continue to get notifications. But if that person is out of our system for a whole year, after that year, that person goes away. And so you won't get any notifications.
Okay. Does a Vine notice on an offender you're registered for trigger? Is it the registration that triggers a year, or the last sent notification that triggers like a year?
It's when the person is booked out of DOC.
Booked out. Okay, so like a defendant, for example, that's under an order of hospitalization.
Well, they'll still be. Do you mean like a mental health facility?
Sure.
Or,
Yes.
Or are you talking about going to the hospital? Because those are different.
They are different, and I'm trying to figure out what I mean. I guess hospitalization wouldn't.
I think you're probably thinking like if they left DOC to go to a mental health facility where they're detained, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't. I mean, maybe Meg has her hand up. Maybe she
can help
has an
me
answer. Or I guess I'm trying to figure out which.
This is another gap in the system that we could talk a whole lot about. When someone goes from DOC custody into a mental health facility, and then there's no notification at that point. They're no longer on a DOC head count, so no longer tracked by Vine.
Right. They're in the custody of the Department of Mental Health. So that's why as soon as I said hospitalization, it didn't feel like the right example. Right. I guess the language in this specific notice, like to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to get notices? When am I going to stop? Like that kind of, it worries me, but I'm not sure what it means, I guess.
Okay, so please think about that one, Shay, and we can talk about language for sure. Because if you're confused, then probably other people are going to be confused about that.
And I do want to encourage people who've been giving feedback to Meredith, because I feel like she's walking away with a really heavy weight. If you can help by just emailing the group about some of the pieces that have been brought up, because I do want to leave space for public comment, but I also, there's been a lot of things that Meredith is volunteering to take on, and I just want to, in the interest of clarity, have folks again, follow up with an email just so that we can streamline pieces and make her life easier and more efficient.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jen. Put everything in writing. That would be great.
Oh, and look, Tammy already had her hand up, and then she said, I'll just email Meredith. So
great.
Megan, do you have a comment before I want to, again, make time for public comment? But I see your hands up. And you're muted.
Sorry, quickly, I just wanted to flag on this subject, the discharge, if we are putting this language in, discharge from supervision, it should, and I'll email Meredith, should also probably be we should be including that. And then I do have a larger question about people who have absconded. Because sometimes they're out for way more than a year, and if their Vine notice or their Vine registration is then going to get deleted because they've been absconded for over a year, that's a big problem.
Right, exactly.
I also just hate the word absconded. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's not an accessible word.
Yes, I think that Amy flagged that as well, that doesn't make any sense to the average person.
Yeah, and I think that notification in itself it comes out way later than the person, we don't, that notification is not triggered until we have a commissioner's warrant, and that person may have been out, may have absconded a long time ago. Well, so that's something we've flagged too.
Do we want to include anyone else on this, on the email? Meredith, do you want us to include Cassidy or?
Maybe
Um,
Haley. Maybe Haley
Haley?
and Cassidy. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And could you also just keep me in the loop too, so that I can have a sense of what our next meeting is going to look like? I
Yeah,
don't-
absolutely. I'm gonna
I
be
don't have
really
any
brief.
expertise.
I'm gonna bullet, because we've had the conversation, so I'll just bullet some of the issues that I think are kind of on Meredith's or DOC's plate.
And I'll send issues that involve Joe to Joe, or if you guys want to include Joe, please feel free.
Well, I had a question, but I can send this to you, Meredith, too. It's real simple. It's about timing of release notifications, but I do want to, so I'll just send that. I have had some survivors ask if there's a possible way to get it before 30 days, but I'll just bullet that to you as well, but as a
Sure.
question to see about that. Wow, I learned a lot today, and I want to hear what the public has to say. I do believe that somebody, at least one person has comment, but just other people who are in attendance who haven't had a chance to speak and want to add something, the floor is yours.
I'd love to kick it off. This was very informative. I wanted to share just a couple things. One, Shay, in regards to you asking the question of people who forget their username or their password. Literally just did that while we were on the call. I'm going to be real honest with you, because I just changed my phone number a week ago. And it wasn't until we were on this call that I went, oh crap, I should probably update my phone number in Vine. And that's speaking to somebody who's a Vine user for 13 years now. Still had to remember that. Went in and was like, what's my password again? And then I went, oh crap, I can't get myself sent a text message because it has my old phone number. Luckily, I have it set up with my email as well. But that is something that, and so I was quickly able to navigate that, but that is something that I think needs to be identified for people who are changing their phone numbers for protection, are, moving. We don't need to put in our address or anything like that, but those are little things that still come up for somebody who is seasoned in this work, has to go, now what was my password again? Which one was it? What was my login? And having to navigate that. So something for us to certainly be keeping in mind as we roll out information to people around those things. And I think could be nicely tied in with the Safe at Home program as well. But just to kind of clarify for everyone, because I know I'm kind of in here and sometimes people aren't quite sure why, I just wanted to clarify that, like, my goal is really just to support all of you in communication and serving victims through Vine. Like, all of us in the end are really kind of on the same page. We want to serve victims. We want to make these services work the best we can. And I'm here to sit in the room with you, to have conversations with you, not only in my role as a Vine consultant, but also as a Vermonter. And as I said, someone who's used Vine successfully for the past 13 years. I was asked to fill this role because I have professional roles with almost everybody on this call in some capacity. I've done work with you. You've helped me on my own case years ago, all of these different things. And so I really value this opportunity to be here with you to help craft these notifications, look at menu options, make sure we get options back with Vine. I know that's a huge thing for all of us, looking at how we can resolve these human errors and just really then looking at how we can roll this all out in the future for identifying training and delivery methods, which I think is going to be such a huge part of this that I know I'm really excited about, because I think that we have an ability here to really create new systems of communication, not just around Vine, but in all of our different agencies and with stakeholders, and that we can roll out something that can be really robust for years to come and is only going to help you and all of us do our jobs, which is really to serve victims. So I just wanted to take a moment to kind of clarify that, and please reach out to me. I'm happy to sit in any meeting just to kind of listen, to be that liaison back to Vine. I've got a little list of questions that I need to go back and ask them today. And yeah, just reach out to me with any questions you have and anything I can do to help you. And don't hesitate. So thank you. And any questions, if anybody has one, please chime in.
Thank you, Anna. It's certainly helpful to have you also, being able to bring these questions back to Vine as well. So appreciate that very, very much.
Oh, one more thing, when I was on Vine updating my phone number, I saw that in Washington State, they have 16 language options when you go to Vine. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. I did a quick little check through as I was updating, and yeah, once I was able to get my password again, it was very easy, but I think that it's good to know that there are those options if we want them.
Any other comments from the public? Or any other last thoughts? I do want to note, Anna, after that I wanted to bring up to the group that we have somebody from another victim notification program that has been following and watching the recordings and the minutes, and she is going to be sending materials to us. So I will forward those on as soon as possible, just so that people can have a look at those and whether or not that's appropriate for this piece, but something for consideration also if there's going to be an expansion of the victim notification process, and just for other people who are looking at entities who are looking at that, whether it be, I know that there's discussion in the firearms surrender group. I know there's, the network is also looking into the civil protection piece. So I think that, certainly I'll just share those documents and people can decide how they want to proceed.
Sounds good. I just want to say thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone's, thoughtful input, and I wish I could answer all your questions. Unfortunately, I'm not the Vine manager and I have lots going on, but any questions you have that I couldn't answer, please send me and I'm happy to try to get answers.
I appreciate that, Meredith. And the more we can use email for these pieces too, I think will just really help, because it's a lot. And I feel like, I'm a fixer, I'm a doer, and I feel like I have this like list. And then we go to these meetings and they're amazing in terms of the discussion and conversation, but then I'm like, oh my goodness, and there's this and there's that. So using that email, I know everybody's so busy, but we have an opportunity here again. The legislature actually is interested, they actually care. And that will tie in, I hope, into resources and more support. And again, I really appreciate the time everybody puts into the work. And I think together that we're going to come out of this with a much more supportive process for victims and survivors. So don't forget email, don't forget phone as things come up. If you heard something today that you want somebody to get more information on, it might not just be Meredith and Joe. It could just be Meredith and Joe, but I think that we have the folks here that need to be here for this conversation right now. So, and I'm not even going to summarize action steps right now because my head's exploding. So I'm going to go back and and probably not as badly as Meredith's, but I'm going to go back and listen in. But I think, I know I'm going to be working on the law enforcement forum. Amy's going to continue her conversations. Meredith and Joe are going to work as hard as they can to take care of some of these issues. And the more we can support each other between meetings, the more effective we can be. So thank you very much. And thank you also, Amy, for all of your, Amy Richardson, for all of your feedback and disability rights. And, we need you all in the room moving forward for sure. And maybe you'll say to Tracy, I hope I never go to one of those meetings again, or maybe you'll stay with us. So we'll see.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I really appreciate all the work that you're all doing.
Thank you very much. And all right, well, looks like it's sunny out and hope you'll enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.